Have.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Attorney Clement Barrett. As I say every week, listen, if you can hear the sound of my voice, it is indeed a good morning. Welcome to Intex News Radio, reality radio where everybody can be a star. I am the co-host of Straight Up the Middle. And let me tell you about the premise behind Straight Up the Middle, real brief if I could. It is the idea of having a forum in which we hear diverse perspectives on issues that are affected by our political and social things that are occurring in the country. So we try to keep it straight up the middle. One way we do that is by having somebody who's a more conservative, thoughtful person who has more experience in life and actually, let me just say, makes more sense than I do on the radio show with me. And that is none other than Pete Edwards. Good morning, Pete. How are you doing today?
Oh man, it's been an interesting week of contrasts and comparisons, sorrow, uh, tempered joy. It's crazy all over the place, locally, nationally, with children, with trials, with I mean, it's just weird. Coming off of last week's show, I got a lot of flack from some people who said that I was wrong about the country becoming more Nazism or neo-Nazism. That's well, for those people, they need to do their homework. They need to pay attention to stuff all over the country and all. And I think the Chauvin trial shows some example of that. Believe it or not, that's why I say our excitement on that jury verdict has to be tempered in advance of appellate decisions and the follow through. I'll leave it at that, Clint.
I think the whole idea that you said about it's an interesting time. But just think, Pete, people want to make it out like today is such a crazy, convoluted world. I looked at a movie not long ago called The Chicago Seven. Have you seen that movie?
Yes.
Okay. And that was pretty crazy to me. I mean, just if people talk about the summer of '68. I was, you may remember it a little more vividly. I wasn't, that conscious at the time of what was or was not happening in the country. But it seemed like a pretty crazy time. You follow that up with the '70s and Nixon having to resign and oil embargoes and some of the crazy stuff, happening in the Middle East. And then we move into the '80s, wherein we have Reaganomics take hold, and of course we end that decade in an Iraq War. I think it was the end of that decade. We end up in Iraq War One, and then we move into the '90s, and technology explodes, and we have to try to society catch up with how we're going to function with all this new technology. And each decade, I'm basically just trying to say has its own challenges that sometimes have been around. They just reveal themselves in that moment. And that's where I kind of look at today, Pete. What we're seeing isn't created or isn't, it's just being revealed. And because we've not been willing to have conversations with people that see and think differently than us, uh, we're a little bit shocked to hear that this kind of dynamic exists. It's kind of like, I would say white folks thought when they saw the Black Panthers starting to take root in some of the more radical groups in the civil rights movement, they say, wait a minute, we thought we were all friends and everybody's moving in the same direction. You're always going to have that element, I think, that's a little bit more radical, hanging around. And I think that's what we're seeing with this race stuff uh, right
I
now.
mean, it's crazy. Here's the thing. I've always said one of the best things that could have happened to the black community in one way, uh, as far as re-strengthening and trying to reach out in better coalitions and all, is the election of Donald Trump, because he exposed, rightfully so, in one way. If you look at it, I tell people all the time, especially young students, you need to take political science courses and pay attention to stuff like that. Donald Trump exposed uh, what we thought was there all the time, beyond the normal Klansman and what have you. He exposed the truth of America now, that talks about that shows how deep racism is, how deep Nazism is coming back and all. So hopefully that exposure from him with people in Congress and the whole bit uh, will strengthen the black community and make us go back and get a stronger coalition. And here's the other thing that really I want to hold in on that makes it really even more relevant. If anybody saw the 60 Minutes show on Sunday, last Sunday, they had a
Yes.
member of the, I guess, the Oath Keepers, and he laid it out as plain and comfortable and confident as he wanted to about how within the police departments, within the military, the cross training and all, this forthcoming, what they're trying to, a new Make America Great Revolution with the Nazi theme to it. And I urge young people to go back and pull that up on the internet, and that tells you it's different. The Chicago 7, yes, the different decades, but this is different because it is even more open and it exposes more people who are not afraid to be exposed as being racist and being exposed as being empathizers of the Hitler movement and that kind of stuff. And so when you see a guy on a national show like that, and remember I told you, Clint, that I thought the Black Lives Movement and the Blue Lives Movement were both out of sync. That show emphasized to me that the Blue Lives Movement was fake, because there's no way you could have said you for Blue Lives Matter the way they just beat up on the people, the policemen at that insurrection. And then there are other articles out that have come out through the FBI investigation that shows that some of those people storming the Capitol and all went out of their way to target for hate and injury black Capitol police officers. So what did that tell you? So, when you look at all of that, that makes the Chauvin verdict, to me, I think you're going to see more type of incidents like George Chauvin. I think the charges itself on appeal, he may wind up being stuck with one. I think I'm really concerned about that third-degree murder charge that they added on. And then, from a lawyer standpoint, you always look for things you can win on appeal. And then what topped me off really as a conservative, what the hell was Maxine Waters doing there while the trial was going on? For people, you and I know better, but a lot of people really think jurors go home and don't pay attention to media, TV, and all. That's not true.
Okay, let's talk about Maxine for a minute, because I thought she played an interesting role now, and we've seen this play out previously with other people jumping into trials when they shouldn't have anything to say about it. So I wasn't as bothered, because one of my things, Pete, Black Americans have always tried to play by the rules that were said to be the rules, but really the rules being followed, there's a different set of rules that really apply when they talk about liberty and justice and equality and all those kinds of things. So I wasn't so offended that she went there. She's an American citizen, a private citizen. Her voice should be no more impactful than anyone else's voice, really, in these situations. And, we've allowed this country to, I guess, bastardize the judicial system while we try to say, no, we're going to have faith and trust in people doing the right thing. And unfortunately, oftentimes for African Americans, we've got a short hand. I thought the idea of her coming out says, listen, we're not going to sit back and just wait till everything's over and then your cry foul. I'm going to put my voice into the mix right now. I'm always for, I like people that speak up a little bit. I like having Maxine Waters stick her neck out a little bit, and maybe more people should think along those lines.
The timing. That's what I have an issue with.
That was strategic. I thought that was intentional. If you were to say to me, was she trying to influence the jury? I'd say yes. If you would say that, I would say absolutely so. She was trying to influence the jury. Now, is that the way that we like to say we want our system to work? No, but does it work that way though, Pete? It does.
Well, the other thing with Maxine, she doesn't carry the weight like she used to. See, I look at it as if I'm the present will be sliding into the past. Young people under 40 are the present, hopefully to strengthen us in the future. So when you see somebody like Maxine Waters coming in the state of Minnesota, in lieu of her home state of California, most African Americans under 40 have no idea who in the hell she is, because it's a hit and miss thing with them. And that's generally the thing for elected officials, black, white, or Hispanic, who's been in office for a long time. And all they think they can just show up at the last minute and have a photo op and a sound bite. And that's where my conservatism coming in. Where you take care of your problems in California, you take care of the power that you have as the financial chair of the House. But to come in at that time, it smacked to me that she's trying to get some rah-rah for herself and not for the best interest of George Floyd and his family.
So that's another. I want to say this though, and say a little bit about George Floyd and his family. They have handled this themselves so well. Sometimes you have these issues, and the family comes forward and they kind of muddy the water up. And I just thought that in this whole process, because they've been thrust into the national limelight, and that's a tough place to be for average folks. Suddenly now, harsh words and everything you say and whatever you do is looked at, So his family, I thought, really represented themselves well and did a really, really good job in the thing. So now I want to dive into the verdict and the aftermath a little bit, but I'm always accused of hogging the microphone, Pete, and running my mouth too much. So if you listen to the show and you want to call in, let's use the regular radio station number, 813-444-9588. That's 813-444-9588. We'll get you on. We can get your comments. Okay, Pete, let's talk about this verdict. Your thoughts, a week or so of having to reflect on the outcome of that trial. What are your thoughts?
Here's the thing. I thought they would hang up on one of the charges. Some school of thought, legally and otherwise, that there's a duplicity of the type of charges. For one case itself, you got murder, you got third-degree murder, then you got manslaughter, and then they get found guilty of all three. So I think what's going to happen is that probably one or two of those charges will be dropped on appeal. The other thing, if people thinking that the police officer is going to get the maximum penalty, they can forget about that. Because so a lot of people are looking at it.
How do you say you don't think he'll get the max?
No. See, a lot of people look at the type of charges in Minnesota as if the person was in Florida with the sentencing guidelines the whole bit. And so, as you know, as well as I do, if that case was similarly occurred in Florida, first of all, they probably wouldn't have got an indictment in most of these judicial circuits. But even if it was, it probably would have been capped out at second-degree murder. And then when you look at sentencing of police officers in cases like that, judges are reluctant to sentence police officers to a maximum time on incident. And here, let me give you a caveat with that, Clint. I get so tired of people talking about the Justice Department, the federal Justice Department is going to come in and investigate these officers. That's fake. They come in, they very rarely investigate these cases, and when they do, they'll indict them and seek a civil rights violation. But if you look at the federal statutes on civil rights violations and all like that, most of those sentences are capped at 10 years versus 40 or whatever. So one of the fake things is that Black and Hispanic and other people of color always hear that the Justice Department is going to look out for our interests. But again, going back to the profile of the guy that was on 60 Minutes, he basically told you between words and everything that the law enforcement, the court system and all, is primarily going the same direction as the Oath Keepers. So when you talk about convictions and all, I doubt seriously if he'll get the max, number one. I think they're going to knock out that third-degree charge or that manslaughter charge. And I think you're going to see more type of incidents like George Floyd. Maybe not so much as the Nick, but I think you're going to see more type of incidents where citizens who, for an example, might take the picture, like the young lady that filmed all that. I think they're going to become the victims of police brutality. And you know why? Number one, Black or white officers are reluctant to report other police officers. They know that the unions, generally the prosecutors and the courts themselves, particularly in this climate, favor protecting them. So you're not going to see all that. And then we don't have the connection between black officers who the people ahead of them have paved the way for them. They're not really connected to the black community. So their allegiance is more to their fellow police officer getting their check and retire. If you don't believe it, there is a case in Louisiana where this old man, this brother, a police officer, kept tasing him and all, and say, hey, knowing that he's on camera and whatever, do you want some more? Do you want some more? So people got to get out of this myth and thinking that it's all white police officers that are pain in the ass. No, it's black ones too, and it's Hispanic ones. But at the end of the day, the Chauvin trial will not create a lot more prosecutions. I think it was a blip on the screen that they found him guilty. And I think of the 3 charges, he'll wind up being only sentenced to 1 after all the appellate process and the whole bit. That's my,
All right,
I'm sticking with it.
listen. Okay, look. So first of all, I'm going to take full credit for predicting conviction on all 3 charges.
I mean,
All 3 of them. This is going to be a seminal, I think, mark where people take a step back and they're rethinking. I think I don't know. They've been very lenient with police. That judge's demeanor. If I was defending him, I'd be very worried about the sentencing. I'm predict he's gonna get max on all of them. One, because of what you just said about the potential for appeal on several of the charges. That that judge wants him, I think, put away. Then the second part of what you commented about was um, the duplicity of the charges. I think there was already an appeal made to whether or not you could add one of those charges based on that argument. And the appeals court said you could. So I don't know if they're going to come back and undo that. But this case is so politically and racially charged. I just don't see a judge superseding what the jury decided and changing that, even at the appellate level. So
Clint,
here's my prediction:
go ahead.
max sentence, or pretty close to max sentence on all the charges, that he appeals, and that the appeal is not successful. If it is successful, he'll just be resentenced. But because they're going to give him so many years on all the other charges, it won't really matter. Because in my book, I don't care about the man being in jail for 40 years or 30 years or 25 years. It just needs to be of significant amount uh, that it impacts how these people function in our system. That everybody believes there is accountability and we can trust the system to be fair. That's really what that we gotta get out of this case. That it could be fair. Now let me ask you this question though, Pete. What role do you think politics played in how the case was handled and the outcome that we got from the trial?
You gave the answer yourself. Here's and think about what you just said in your comments, your commentary. You talked about the people thoughts, but remember, it's not the people thoughts that count in law enforcement, judicial action, all against police officers and all. It's the elected officials, it's the judiciary, and it's the police unions. That's the thing, Clint, more than, and because those folks know that people come and go on a controversial trial, but the unions and the overwhelming amount of prosecutors and the extreme right wingers, including those of the white evangelical Christian, they see as things consistent. So they'll look at the Chauvin conviction as just a blip on the screen. They'll refine some things, how to support bad police officers, and that's what they're gonna go with. And you know, I'm a conservative, but I'm not an extremist. So I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's it's a
Uh-huh.
difference.
Yeah, but I think they're gonna. It's kind of like in football. They got rid of a lot of the guys that head hunt and the dirty hits and stuff in football. I think this marks a significant movement in getting rid of bad police officers. And that's because they make it dangerous for the other good police officers. I just got a comment from a law enforcement officer just sent me a, of course he's, got 50 things to throw out. But I think at the end of the day, our law enforcement, they need to be able to be trusted. They need to be able to be believed in. And I think this trial is intended to do that because they got the Rodney King thing so wrong. And we have a rash right now of shootings that are happening. The other thing is, Pete, going forward, video is changing this. And you mentioned a young lady, that video across the board, wherever you go, there's video almost of any minute, everywhere, surveillance. The other shooting, the other where the police officer shot the young girl. There's two videos of that. There's his camera video, right? And then there's a neighbor's video from his driveway. So you have multiple videos. So I think the video and the knowledge that you're going to have to explain what you do based on what the video shows, I think it's going to impact law enforcement going forward.
Should. But the question is always going to be question the video versus what the training says. And then keep in mind, and I want to tell all our listeners, whether you like me saying it or not, police officers, until they make up their mind that they're going to kick their fellow brothers and sisters out for bad behavior, it's not going to change. And first, that's the first thing has to be done. Hey, look, man, you know what? I'm not having this anymore. Then number two, voters have to understand, we could really pay good salaries to police officers and those who need to be working with them, like mental health officials and all, without a union. But black people, brown people, better get it clear in their mind. Unions protect bad police officers. And if it's a black or a person of color who's the victim, I'm sorry. They're gonna protect that officer no matter what, even if he stands out in the middle of the street and shoots an 8-year-old kid in the back with just swim trunks on, and that's it. I mean, I keep it real, Clint. I keep it real.
Disagree. I'm going to ask if you're law enforcement checking out the show, contact us. Let us know what you think about this. What can be done about bad police officers and getting rid of them in the law? I know the registry is an idea that's been thrown around, Pete. I don't know if that's it, but if you can either call in 813-444-9588. Let us know what you think about what can be done about bad police, because I think this is like an incredible example of bad policing at its that we hadn't seen. I guess I don't know when, but it is
So I give you a local example. Do we have in the Tampa Bay area? Do we have unity among the black police officers that we should have now? No, we don't. When you look at the 4 policemen that had the courage to sue the city of Tampa and all like that, at one time, in fact, when Benny Holder was chief, he brought in the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Executives, National International Conference here. They had, at one time, TPD, they had Noble, and then they had the Association of Black Law Enforcement Executives. They used to train it all. When you talk to brothers and sisters now, they're not locally in the Tampa Bay area. They're not interested in anything like that. They don't even speak with each other. Give me my check and let me go home.
Real quick, I just got a message from someone that said that they're trying to call in DJ Anna.
Yeah, we're working on it. They're working
through on our line. See if you can check that out. Make sure I got that number correct. 444-9588 is the call-in number that I have. If not, I can get out my Zoom number.
And have them call in the Zoom too, Clint.
What's that now?
Have the Zoom number. You're gonna get that on your message thing in a minute. Clint, understand. People have to understand that when you look at the case, just look at the case in North Carolina, Elizabeth City, North Carolina, 18,000 people or whatever. They got an HBCU there. They shot a guy that they was serving a warrant for drugs or whatever. Shot him in the back and what have you. Now, they put 7 on leave, 3 of them have resigned and all. But the bad police officers going to know that I'm protected by the union, number one. My number one excuse that I'm going to give is that that's the training I received, number 2. If it gets to court number 3, and the defendant has any, the victim has any prior record and all, the courts are gonna look at favorable to me, because no judge wants to be accused of cell phone crime. And if the victim has a terrible record, no matter how I kill him, the majority of the judges, they're gonna look the other way. I told people, if the Chauvin case occurred in Pinellas County, they wouldn't have indicted him on the 3 counts that they did. Maybe Hillsborough.
I disagree. In that Carolina case, if it comes out that that guy shot in the back, Pete, you're gonna be surprised. That cop's gonna get prosecuted. Now, I think you're looking at. I'm saying my hopefulness from being a generation later may be the thing that sees this differently. Is that I'm aware of the concern that you have, but I just believe there is a change happening in how we handle stuff. How
Apple Clint,
okay.
In Pinellas County, a lot of old school guys will remember this case with James Russell when he was the state attorney, one of the most racist state attorneys in the state of Florida. And then he put Bernie McCabe in the spot when he died. They had a case where a black officer got sentenced for time, was struggling with a white guy in Clearwater. They charged him. They gave him some time, I think 10 years or something like that. All the other cases of alleged police brutality and all like that, they haven't done anything. But they wanted to make an example of this black police officer in Clearwater that they claimed that he roughed up this old white guy in the back behind his car and all. And I urge our listeners to do your history work and look at the difference. So people have an illusion that they think that the Chauvin case is not going to happen until officers, white, black, and brown, within that department say, you know what, we through with it. And then we got to stop letting the unions, the judges and politicians and legislature know the reason why they come up with this backing the police all the time, good or bad or indifferent, because they want the union's endorsement, and they're afraid of the unions and their right-wing supporters accusing them of being cell phone crime, that kind of stuff. That's the reality of it.
Pete, I never thought I'd see the day that you'd be so wrong on an issue that is so right in front of America as you are. That's the past. That is not the current situation that we're facing. I think the Chauvin verdict is evidence of that. I'm all for giving police room to do what they need to do. But the day of multiple groups, unions, the police officers, the legal system, the administrative structure, local government, covering police officers, that day's over. Bad police are going to repeatedly find themselves again and again on an island by themselves. Now, here's what I want to do, though. We got to go to break right now. I am being beat over the head on my text messages by Ed Narain. He's insisting he gets in the conversation. So I told him what he can do is on the other side of the break, Pete, Ed Narain's going to join us for a brief moment to make some comments on what we've been talking about. So let's do this. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. Yeah.
It's geared to how we can make a positive difference in lieu of maybe making a point or two that may help him if he decides to run for office later on. That's my friend, but I have to keep it real with him. All right?
The two of us will put him in a headlock, okay? All right. All right, we're going to take a quick break, everybody. We'll be right back on Intex News Radio, reality radio, where everybody can be a stop. Back after this quick commercial break.
Call Ricky. Ask Ricky. You need medical or a lawyer? I got the man to do the legwork for you. We tried the other ones before, so believe we hunted down 813-248-6300. Everything gon' be okay. Call Ricky, he coming. He taking care of state of Florida. Grab a pen or sundown. 184-361-RICK. That's 184-361-425. Never word from the point forward, just recline. Just ask Ricky, plus your boy statewide. 5. Just in case you missed it, I'ma tell you one more time. 1-800-361-RICK. Call Ricky. Ask Ricky. It's a legal medical referral service. The doctors and lawyers in our network are trained in handling auto injury claims and getting you the best medical treatment and recovery. Dial 1-844-361-RICK. That's 1-844-361-7425. Ricky. Ask Ricky.
Who doesn't love being number one? When your team's dominating the standings, or your favorite band rocks the charts at number one, it feels good, right? Kind of like how it feels when you have auto insurance with State Farm. Because making you feel like number one is an honor your local State Farm agent takes seriously. Through the good times and not so good, your State Farm agent's proud to be here to help life go right.
Call Herman White at 961-6661. That's 961-6661.
Thinking politics? Tampa Bay Politics is on every Wednesday at 11 a.m. with Angela Birdsong. Tune in right here on In Touch Radio.
All right, we're back live with Intake Radio, reality radio where everybody can be a star. And my name's Clint Paris, and I've got on the line with me today as well, none other than the best co-host there can be, Pete Edwards. Pete, how you feeling today?
Keeping it real, my brother.
I'm making notes though. I'm putting it on the record. Pete is wrong as wrong can be about the prosecution of police officers in this new climate that we have. You know, one of the things, I see this in my practice, you know, I do a lot of personal injury work, and I'll have people say to me, well, you know, I went through the light and I had the green and they had the red and X, Y, and Z. And then we'll go to the nearby convenience store and ask them, did y'all have video of that intersection on X date? Oh, yeah, we did, sir. Okay, so we'll get that in Discovery. And guess what? The video shows something completely different than what they said would happen. It's changing so many things, Pete. Video, people look at it, it doesn't lie. It sets the stage. So look, I promised Ed, he's texting me, he's got comments. Let me get it. First, I'm gonna see Pete, if I can get him to say and declare himself running for mayor first, and then see what he has to say that can have a positive change. Let's see if he comes in. Ed Rain, are you there with us?
Good morning, Mr. Paris. Brother Paris, how are you today?
I am good, man. I'm good. You're on here with none other than Pete Edwards as well in Touch News. First of all, I want to congratulate your partner from your camp for his great win yesterday from Legendary Management. Understand that your man Wendy Pognon squares out another victory. So congratulations on that, man. You should.
You know, thank you very much. That's very magnanimous of you to acknowledge the champ on this show. Let's not forget Tim Adams, who finished in second place yesterday. But great showing from BBE, just not enough.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk a little bit. So I know you listened to us, and I apologize. We couldn't get you on the regular phone line in the studio. So I asked you to go ahead and connect with us here on Zoom. Clearly, you have some thoughts that you wanted to share with us this morning about what we're talking about.
Well, yeah, let me start with this, right? For the first time in a long time, I actually agree with Pete Edwards, right? And so tell Pete he has nothing to worry about. I'm not running for office.
Wait a minute.
I'm not running for office. I don't know that I'll ever do that again in my life. The scrutiny is amazing. But here are some facts for you, right? Unions only exist to help bad police officers get off. Let's start with that. And Democrats have been fooled for years by the concept of, oh, we need to support all unions. And they haven't looked at the entire picture. The Chauvin case really annoyed me. It annoyed me on several fronts. First of all, the fact that African Americans were waiting with bated breath, nervous, scared about what the verdict may have been, tells us everything we need to know about the criminal justice system and how it's affected African Americans in this country. It is so steeped with racism still that a very open and shut case that the entire world saw on video, we were concerned that the officer might walk. That alone psychologically should tell you how bad racism has messed up our minds in this country. So it's easy for us to identify who the racist white folks are because they're like, oh, I don't understand this verdict. You have a state legislator, Anthony Sabatini, and he would love nothing more than for me to call his name right now to give him some press. But he called this immediately mob justice. I'm sorry. The jury was not concerned about what would happen to Minneapolis. I think you could have put Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles on that jury, and they too would have seen how guilty Chauvin was in this case. But here's what it comes down to. You have 50 states in this country, and all 50 states have had some form of police reform proposed in their state legislatures. But the majority of them, particularly in the South, are Republican controlled, which is why out of over 600 pieces of legislation in the South, in the Southern states, you've only seen 5 police reform bills actually move, not even get signed in. 2 of them are very high profile. One in Kentucky, Breonna Taylor case, Senate Bill 4, actually passed with the governor's support, which reforms no-knock warrants. And then in Georgia, I think it's House Bill 497, which dealt with the citizen arrest laws. And that's only because Governor Kemp made it a priority in the wake of the Ahmaud Arbery murder. So it has to be high profile for Black folks to get justice. And that, in essence, is the root of the problem. You know, let's not forget that just a couple of years ago, North Carolina proposed arresting and charging bystanders who videotape the actions of police officers. So how do we get justice? There's only one way to do that, and that's through a federal policing reform act, which I hope next to a voting rights act are the 2 things the Biden administration gets done, if nothing else, before his tenure is up. So that's the solution, Pete. It's the federal government has to put in place guidelines for police officers, including registries, including collecting the data of arrests. All of that has to go down in order for there to be substantial change. And of course, yes, we need more African Americans and Hispanics in law enforcement, you know, so that's right. Mhm.
People. And then you look
Right.
at some black police organizations which don't have power to negotiate, but they fight hard, like maybe in New York and some other ones in Detroit or some other places that they're a little bit more connected to the black community. But if I'm sitting in as the police union, or if I'm sitting in as somebody that says, hey, like Anthony Sabatini or whatever, one of the things they're looking at politically, now that the Chauvin trial is over, they don't expect, and these right wing extremists, they don't expect coalitions to still be involved, anything that could make us elected officials, Republican and Democrat and independents, to go with police reform. They understand that if you look at the pattern, young people are going to drop off their interests. Millennials people are a little older, they're going to stay for a moment, and then the only people that's left are older people over 50 that believes in the election process and legislative reform and all. And so when you look at it from the black community point of view, we don't have the coalitions like we used to. Somebody accused me of being a racist, Republican racist, because I said Asians are limited in what I think about. I sympathize with the ones that got shot, but when I look at the Asian businesses and how they destroyed our communities, don't participate in giving our private schools anything, were reluctant to hire black women. In fact, when they started hiring them on Hillsborough, they didn't even let them operate the cash register. So when it comes down to Asian businesses, what the hell am I going to support them for when they don't give anything? They follow you around the store. You can go in the Yummy House now. You still get that reaction. Well, hey, here's a black man with a tie on. Why in the hell is he here? I'm just saying.
You are asking for the negative press.
Well, let me double down a
No,
little bit. Well, I won't call it double down. Here's what I'll say to that, Pete. You know, as Black Americans, we are like, we deal with racism on a daily basis. And so one of those things where we deal with it so much that it's become unconscious to us, the things that we do and consider. Like, I guarantee you, you will leave the house, forget your wallet that has your ID in it, and you'll go back for your wallet because you know that if you get stopped, you could fit the description as an African American. I have plenty of white counterparts that are like, oh, I left my driver's license today, no big deal. The issue with the Asian hate thing, nobody wanted to see what Donald Trump started last year with the China flu comments and all that other stuff, that targeted hate towards the Asian community. Nobody wants to see that. Black people especially, because we've been the victims of that. However, it was tough for a lot of African Americans to stand in solidarity with the Asian community over this, on the PR campaign side of it, let me say, simply because of some of the things that you pointed out, and because of the caste system that exists within minorities in America. You know, unfortunately, Asian Americans don't see themselves as minorities. Ed, what are you talking about? Well, if you look at every single affirmative action case that has been filed since the 90s, it has always had a white plaintiff and an Asian plaintiff, because they don't believe that African Americans should have access to certain things that they don't have access to, because they don't identify with our plight. So I am distraught over what I see happening. That 65-year-old woman getting beat down by that man in New York City is disgusting. That shouldn't happen to anybody because of their race. But we do have to be mindful that in order to build a coalition, we need allies that understand our situation as much as we are willing to empathize with them.
Let me ask you something.
Let me get you real quick, Ed, before I let you go, because we're about out of time here. And we'll segue back to this, Pete, is, am I imagining it, or does it seem like there's a rash of police shootings hitting the news right now? Is this increased reporting, or do you think it's an increase in occurrences of questionable shooting situations? Your thoughts, Ed?
So I think there's more being brought out now because people have camera phones and they're catching this. The nation is aware more than it's ever been on some of the injustices that happen. Think about how many white counterparts you have that said, I had no idea you had to give your son the talk, right? They didn't know what that was until last year. But, you know, you want two concrete solutions to some of these police shootings. One, stop shooting people when they run. In other words, you look at the Dante Wright situation in Minnesota, they already had him in handcuffs. He decided to run. Let him run. You caught him once, you're going to catch him again. Very similar to the policy that St. Petersburg enacted 5 years ago, where they ended the high-speed chase because innocent people were getting struck down while the police officers were chasing them. You got to do that. Number two, let's do more mental health training. Let's get some mental health officers on the scene for these type of situations with police officers. Police officers have a tough job, okay? I'm saying this as the brother of a police officer. At the end of the day, people call the police for some nonsensical stuff. I guarantee you 30 to 40% of the calls they're going on today are dealing with mental health crises that counselors could help with. That way, weapons aren't getting pulled out immediately. People are being talked off the ledge rather than being killed.
I mean, see, when you talk, one of the biggest mistakes the Black progressive movement made, along with some of those extreme left-wing white folks, when they talked about defunding the police department. That was a mistake politically, public relations-wise. What they should have said, hey, we're going to take this budget and readjust and put some positions in the police department that deals with mental health and whatever the case may be. Now, Ed, you hit on a point where you talked about the cameras and all. I'm saying to everybody again, you can have all the camera work you want to. The issue, the first thing that the union and bad police officers are going to say is that the training they receive. And so if you get, I give you a good example. Locally, within the Tampa Police Department for years, you have officers who retire from the uniform side, and then they stay within the police department to conduct training and whatever, which is, Clint, a lot of people don't know, that's the civilian side, so that's a different thing. Ask yourself, in the last 40 years, how many, or ask them to give you the record, how many black officers that have transitioned from a good police officer into the training division of the Tampa Police Department? You can count them maybe two at the most, but I tell you what, and I stand by it, and I even told one of the prior chiefs this, that some of the people that they've taken as majors or whatever retired from the uniform side and put them on the civilian side for training, those jokers were a pain in the butt on the street, because I've seen a lot of them that, you know what I mean?
We got to start doing the training.
Yeah. So that's the issue, the training.
Ed, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. I appreciate you very much. Sorry about the
No,
technology,
great show.
inability to call in. We'll get that worked out by next week. You have a great day, and I will see you soon. And listen, unlike Pete, I want you to run for every office you think you might be able to win. And get on here. You can announce. We can announce it right here on Intex News Radio. So thanks a lot.
If that ever happens, we will break it here first.
All right. We're gonna hold you to that.
Have a great Saturday, guys.
All right, take care.
But
boy.
Clint, it's the training. It's the training. I just looked at the Florida Bar News, Clint, where they got an article in your Florida Bar Association that they're getting ready to have another diversity type seminar.
Yeah.
It's easy for bad police officers if you got a strong union and the union doesn't, and the union has state attorneys, or the union can threaten judges that, hey, we're gonna call you soft on crime. And if you got that kind of power structure, first of all, representing you, and then you can always go back to, this is what I train. And you know why it's also effective? The average citizen don't know what the hell the training is for a police officer. They don't know.
I agree. I just disagree with you on. I think slowly the walls are coming down. I don't think the union has nearly the power that it used to have. They make a lot of noise when something happens, and internally, I think they do. But from a community standpoint, I think that power is kind of diminished. I'm for having employees have a mechanism of helping them, deal with administrative and employment issues. But look, people, we almost ran out of time, but I got to give you, as a good Republican, a shot at my man Biden. We're up almost on his 100 days in office, and I just wanted to just check a little bit and see your thoughts on how Biden is doing. And one of the things, the specific I want to find out is, where are we at on this unification of, I thought he was going to come in and get us unified, and I just don't know that I'm feeling any traction on unifying America right now from Joe Biden.
But if I'm Joe Biden, look, if you measure who he is today in the political scheme, and you look at the real true Republican Party, right now Joe Biden would be considered a moderate Republican if he was on the Republican side, or a conservative Democrat. He's a realist. He hadn't been in there but 100 days. Now here's what you look for. In the Tampa St. Pete Times today, they've recommended 5 lawyers to be the next U.S. attorney for the Middle District of Florida. 2 of them are African Americans. One is an African American female that's a top U.S. Justice Department assistant lawyer now, and a brother, I think, from Orlando. So you got to look at his appointments as far as, and you got to look at what the senators say in approving his appointments for attorneys and all. Second thing you have to look at, as far as Biden, how he's going to pull everybody together. And one of the biggest things is infrastructure improvement. All the streets are bad all over the place. We need bridges that may fall down at any minute. We need those repairs and all. Now the key to that is that if you define infrastructure conservatively, that includes more broadband use and all like that. Here's what I look at. If they can put the infrastructure bill together, you know what that means? That means more brothers and sisters going to be working on jobs.
But that doesn't unify. But the unification is going to be, it looks like that's going to have to be forced down Republicans' throats. How do we get unified by, even if you pass that?
The thing, everybody that's Republican, as I mentioned before, is not an extremist racist. What's going to happen, as I mentioned 2 shows in a row, I'm still going to mention it. A lot of good Republicans are now independents. So I would heavily encourage the black community, do your homework, start trying to get a new coalition, and start going back to Republicans who have been turned off by the Trump and the Sabatinis and all like that are independent but has a true base of the party of Lincoln and Reagan, and run them against the extremists. If you don't run them against we have a tendency to vote for one party or another. And let me tell you, it's just like some judges. Most judges are appointed that they're former state attorneys. But let me tell you, some of the toughest judges I've seen against fairness over the years have been former public defenders. What does that tell you? So, it's going to take a while. I think Biden probably by his second year, you will find out exactly where this country stands with unification. But again, I remind our listening audience and you too, we are in the beginning stages of the country going to Nazism. You can just
Well,
look at that. Just
I
look
think
at
that.
that 60 Minutes thing. That's a scary
Well,
thought.
here's why I don't think that's the case. I don't think America is any more racist today than it ever was in the past. And I think it's less racist. And every day it becomes harder and harder to generate, breed, produce more and more hardcore racists. You have opportunists who pretend to be racist for political gain. This lady up in Georgia, I think she saw that Donald Trump was able to capitalize on that kind of presentation and create that kind of aura. So hey, what the heck? I'm gonna jump out there and do it myself. And you had other people jump on the bandwagon, and as soon as it wasn't beneficial, they tended to jump off. Again, you got a good case in point. Mitch McConnell, he went around along with a lot of this Donald Trump
Yeah,
crap
yeah,
until he's out of office.
yeah. Well, Trump brought out the true racists, and then he also brought out African Americans, including. Why you think he's trying to get Herschel Walker to run for Senate?
Oh Lord! Oh, go ahead, Pete.
Okay, why you think he's trying to get Herschel
What are
Walker to
you
run?
Republican?
Because Herschel, and that he remember Herschel was born and raised in of all places, I think Statesboro, Georgia,
Yes.
a lynching capital in Georgia. But Herschel is like Clarence Thomas and Tim Scott. They've been so compromised that if they saw racism in front of them, they wouldn't say anything. And give you a good example of how Trump doing it. Look at Tim Scott. He's going to give the State of the Union rebuttal to Biden, right? And he wants to say, hey, I want a police reform and all. The first question I would ask my fellow Republican, Tim Scott, if you were such a big-time favorite of Donald Trump, how in the hell you let him only appoint one federal black judge in the 4 years, or two at the most, and none out of your state? And you know why Tim Scott didn't rise up against it? Because he thinks he's above racism now, and plus he wants the power of being reelected again so he can do his thing and act like he's got influence, and the hell with everybody else. His people in South Carolina. When Herschel Walker gets in, see, once Herschel got to Georgia and they told him it was all right that maybe he can kick it with a white Georgia cheerleader or something, he took off from that and never looked back. I'm just keeping it real. Young people teach me to keep it real. And so that's why I say I believe in young people, because they keep it real. And Clint, you know I keep it real. And so Herschel is like Ben Carson. They not if they know if in a meeting and they use the N word 10 times in a Trump cabinet meeting, and even with Walker and Tim Scott, you think they're gonna come out to the media to the black community and say I'm pissed off because he used the N word? Now they may come out and say, well, he used the N word like we use it in rap, so it's accepted, and I'm going with it. I'm just saying.
I was on the Herschel Walker piece. I'm a little surprised. I think that's just Donald Trump being Donald Trump, throwing a wrench into the Republican playbook and trying to basically say to Republicans, before you all think about anything y'all want to do, make sure people check with me. I'm the real power piece here. To be said, Pete. So I need to apologize for you. I know I'll let Ed jump in and take over our show. We got 1 minute left, Pete. What should we be looking forward to next week, listening and watching in the media happening?
Basically charter schools. and black kids are suffering. That's what's going to happen in Hillsborough County. We got to stop working on a soundbite and the photo op. Our job as citizens to be up on everything politically and governmental every day. Don't wait till a shooting happens and then you come out the woodwork. Don't wait till the suspension rate continues to be high for black students, particularly now more black females. And then all of a sudden around election time, you come out and say we got to do something about it. Where in the hell you been all this time? We have enough black people that we can do an inside, outside, or washing machine thing. I'm just saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Pete, thank you very much. I want to thank DJ Anna for working back in the studio, keeping everything running smooth. Hey, hang around if you're on the station for The Sole Purpose, which comes up right next after our show. I want to thank you again, Pete, for being here.
Yeah, don't forget our brother that's also on the board, Clint. The brother I'm trying to recruit to be a Republican, a liberal one, but he's cool too.
Good luck with that. All right, everybody, we'll catch you back here next week. This has been In Touch News Radio, reality radio, where everybody can be a star. See you next week. Take care, Pete.